with at the moment, which is, of course, what are the best practices when it comes to dealing with Delta? So Delta is basically, we know that it's been all around the world, and we, in New Zealand, I think we got a little bit complacent. We could talk about that for a long time, but Delta's arrived very quickly, and it's changed the way our life is at the moment and how we do work in property management. So some of the things that David's going to talk about is how we go about doing lettings, how we go about doing viewings, and also just other things like how we go about doing maintenance. So a little bit of background on David. David is the chairperson of RPMA. He's also got 25 years experience in property management. He's been a sales manager at Tremaines Real Estate, and he's the founder of Pukeko, which has 33 licensees around the country. So just before we get to David, one last bit of information. We would love to have some questions from you all. To submit a question, you just go down to the Q&A section, pop your question in there during the webinar, and I'll put those questions to David at the end of David's talk. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to you, David, and we look forward to hearing from you with what you've got to say.
Good morning, everybody. I'll just get this presentation up and shared so that you can actually see it. All right. Can you just confirm, Ryan, that you can see that?
Yes, confirm.
PowerPoint? Wonderful. All right, so RPMA is all about raising the standards in residential property, and this is just one of many webinars that we'll be doing to do that. And as Ryan said, we're talking about this morning, best practice for residential property managers. And oh, sorry, I got distracted by a chat. I thought it might have been urgent. The agenda we're going to be talking about is we're going to talk about the Delta variant. We're going to talk about the review of the COVID-19 guidelines, alert level 3 and level 2, just to bring you up to date if you're not sure. And then we're going to talk about the requirement for keeping records. And then I'm going to put the case for QR codes, about obtaining QR code posters, the practical of that, and how to use the QR codes. But the first thing is, I want to actually address the elephant in the room. And what I've found is that a lot of people, especially on social media, but even property managers, they've got their own personal opinion when it comes to COVID. Now, some of those opinions cover issues of, there's more people die each year in New Zealand of the common flu than COVID. And I've heard comments made, and people are really sincere that, they record COVID deaths, but at the end of the day, there's usually some underlying factor, but it's recorded as a COVID death. Now, the reason I'm raising that right here and now is because if you've got those opinions and you're watching this webinar, it might distract you. I want to make it really clear that you should actually keep your personal opinions separate from your company or your where you work's opinions, because it's really, really important. We can see on social media that if someone has a go at you, you can go from being famous to infamous very, very quickly on social media. So I just want to start off the webinar by saying, at the end of the day, this is the best practice, and I would recommend that your companies seriously consider what I'm proposing here. But certainly you're entitled to your own personal opinion, but just keep that to yourself. Okay. About the Delta variant. Well, the Delta variant has spread rapidly worldwide and is now the main variant in many countries. It is the most transferable variant, spreading a lot more easily than the original version of COVID-19 virus and other variants, and it carries a greater impact. It's a greater load and it's more contagious sooner. So, as well as vaccination, which the government is their clear focus, early detection of cases and swift contact tracing is really a huge key. And if they need to find out who's been a close contact, and they need to get them into isolation. And it seems very clear in the last couple of days as well that the the government has really waved the white flag when it comes to the Delta variant. They're not going to be able to eradicate it. So we've actually got to a stage now where we're going to have to live with it. The Public Health Service have been very clear that it's important to continue to protect ourselves and our whānau and stop the transmission of the disease. And they say physical distancing. If you're unwell, stay home. If you show symptoms, call the health line. Also wearing masks. But really a key thing here is to keep a record of where you've been. So everybody, and I see them quite great when I go around the shopping centres or go to the supermarket, people are actually getting the scanners on their apps phone out and they're recording their visits, because that is really the way that we're going to easily control or find out who has been close contacts, who has been in a particular shop or in a situation or a house, which we'll get to in the last week or so that they can contact those people. Just want to just cover off now the tenancy services guidelines, because they have changed somewhat over the last few months. If you're in Auckland or Waikato, and now it looks like it could be Whangarei, in your COVID alert level 3, you can move, or your tenants can move. They have to be in the same alert level. They can use a removal company. They need to show proof that they're having to move. So a tenancy agreement is the ideal proof for that. And the key thing for alert level 3 is that friends and family can't assist with the move. In COVID level 2, you can see it's pretty similar. You can move. The same alert level, you can't go to a level 3, or if there was a level 1 down to that. You can use a removal company. Again, you still have to show a tenancy agreement or some proof of why you're moving. And people in the same alert level, however, can assist you. So that's really the only benefit for moving in alert level 2. With inspections in alert level 3, you need the tenant's consent. And so you need to actually give them confidence that they will be protected or the risk is low. Otherwise, they can say no. There needs to be physical distancing, face masks. And it's interesting that MB are now promoting virtual inspections. This is worth considering for businesses. It just means that from your office or from your home, you can actually go and do the virtual inspection. From my personal experience, the tenants love it. They have the ability to show the house. You can actually talk about maintenance and just keep that relationship there. I believe in the saying that says, what gets inspected gets respected. So it's really important that you consider maybe a virtual inspections, because MB do support them. The other thing is the owner, which is another side value of it, the owner actually gets to see that their property is being looked after on a regular basis, which is all good PR. If the tenant agrees, you can do final inspections together, or otherwise you would need to do them separately. And a key issue in the guidelines are that you need to keep a record of the visit. With COVID level 2, it goes back to the situation where you can do inspections without the tenant's consent. There's physical distancing, there's face masks, and again, records need to be kept of that inspection. Now for showings, and the reason I've got an asterisk there is to remind me, I'm hoping that no one has the practice of cattle class, where anyone who's interested in viewing a property gets an appointment. I think we're with COVID and the risks that are involved to staff and to potential tenants of the property. We just, at the end of the day, if you're not someone they're going to rent to, please don't show them the property. With the COVID level 3, as for any showings, you need the tenant consent. Now, the tenant, if they're still residing at the property, needs to be outside the property. So it might be a good time to consider that they go down to KFC and get their lunch or their dinner. If the property's vacant, that's fine. But again, you'd be very wise to actually just have people come through at a group at a time. There's the public health measures that you need to actually make sure that you do. And again, here, tenancy services stipulate a QR code as a way of actually recording the visit. In COVID level 2, again, tenant consent's needed. You'd work out a schedule with them. They can't unreasonably withhold consent. There's the public health measures that you need to put in. And again, a QR code is actually listed as something which is a tool to have. So for a property manager, there's not much difference between level 2 and level 3 in reality now with these new changes. But the key thing is the keeping of records. And under the Health and Safety at Work Act, everyone is responsible for health and safety. All PCBUs have a primary duty of care to workers and other people, workers being any maintenance person coming onto the building. We also have a duty of care to our tenants. And officers of PCBUs must exercise due diligence to ensure health and safety is being met. So that's really important, the keeping of records. So I just want to dwell on that a little bit longer. The health department have a contact tracing register that you can get. So if you're keeping a paper system, they have the forms that you can actually fill out. They need to have the phone numbers, email addresses, and names of the people who have actually come through the property for showings. Make sure you keep your contact tracing records secure. It's actually a manual system, so there's actually a lot of shortfalls with it. With a paper-based contact record of recording who comes through the property, they are deemed by the Privacy Commissioner as being personal information. They need to be collected, used, stored, disclosed, and disposed of safely and securely in accordance with the Privacy Act 2020. Now, I just actually want to talk about this a bit longer because, again, not that any of you watching this webinar would be like this, but again, I would have a huge issue. I know when I've actually done bulk showings in the past and kept a record of people, that list sometimes remains in the front seat of the car. Sometimes it gets amongst other paperwork and on the desk. And the question I want to pose is, if you're keeping paper records and you're keeping this personal information, how are you securely storing it? How are you making sure that other people can't see this information who shouldn't be seeing it? And if there's an outbreak in a house and they want to know who's been there in the last week, and they said, well, there was showings done there by this particular property management company, are you actually easily going to be able to get that piece of paper? To me, it would just bring me out in a bit of a sweat about that. But again, I just want to raise that if you're going to keep paper records. You probably get the impression I don't recommend that. So the most secure way for property managers, contractors, or visitors to record their details when visiting a rental property is by scanning a QR code with the New Zealand COVID Tracer app. Most people have been educated now how to use them. Most people have them on their phone. You can tick all the boxes with minimal effort and stress. You just need to do a little bit of hard mahi up front. So how do you obtain these QR posters? So what happens is that the Ministry of Health and others have actually got that under control. For property managers, there are two options that I know of for getting QR codes. First is the Tenancy Practice website, TPS, and then there's the Ministry of Health. So they're the two ways that you can get them. And I just want to speak on those two issues. The first one, tenancy.co.nz. If you go into your My Properties and you go down to a property and it's got an email QR code at the bottom of it, you can click on that. The only issue is that then links you to the Ministry of Health, and there's 3 pages of information that you need to fill out for that property to get a QR code emailed to you. And that's, to be honest, that's quite a lot of work, and doing it one-off, it's pretty time consuming. So I would strongly recommend that you actually use the second alternative, and that's getting the QR codes from the Ministry of Health. So step 1 would be to search Mr. Google, and go to the New Zealand COVID Tracer QR codes. You'll come up on the Ministry of Health and you'll look for, in that page or pages, the using of the bulk upload template. You download the QR location code template, and I'll just show you what that looks like. It looks like this Excel sheet here with a whole lot of information about location, the addresses of the properties, your business number for the property management business number, the email, the contact details, and that sort of thing. So at the end of the day, if you start filling out, I've done a sample one here, it starts to look like this, where you've got the address and everything here. So you just fill out this, location code template. It's got the addresses, your phone numbers, your email addresses, the permanent poster and poster type. There's either vehicle or location. You go to location. Then pretty shortly afterwards, you start getting in your email box, you get individual QR codes for each of your rental properties that you manage. So the issue is once you receive these codes for each property, what now? And what I would strongly recommend is there's several things that you need to do. Inspections. Ensure the email notification letter that you send out to the tenants of doing inspection, it mentions that you're going to have face masks and there's going to be physical distancing. It's more to give confidence to the actual tenant that you're taking COVID seriously, and it'll increase their confidence in what you're doing. The second point would be ensure that you take the property QR code and to record the visit when you're there. Once you scan it to say you're there, you don't have to worry about any other paperwork. It's done. It's been recorded for that property. And so if the health department need to actually find out who's been a close contact or who's been in the location, they've got all the information at their fingertips. And lastly, ensure that no one on the property, of course, is sick or in isolation. I know that you know that, but I'm just adding that in there. With showings, ensure any existing tenant leaves the property, that's in level 3, or under level 2, understands the health measures of face masks and physical distancing. Ensure you take the property QR code to record the visit, but I would also, when you're actually arranging those shortlisted people to come through the property, pre-warn them that they'll need to actually use the COVID Tracer app to sign into the property. Then there's contractors. All PCBUs have a primary care of duty to workers and other people. So as far as reasonably practical, I believe, must engage with workers. Now, contractors are your workers while they're at the property, so you have a responsibility there. Attach the property QR code to work orders and make it clear to the contractor that they must record every visit to the property and adhere to the health required measures of mask and physical distancing. So you're giving the contractor the app to use. So again, that solves that whole problem of recording at the property. And last, but certainly not least, is then your tenants. The tenants. You need to partner with the tenant. Residential tenants have a responsibility also under the Act when work is carried out at the property, and they have to take reasonable care of their own and others' health and safety. What I have done is I have actually made QR codes available for the tenants. I've sent it to them. And on the right here, I've got a sample letter of what I sent to them, talk about the Delta variant, talk about the transferable and that it spreads quickly, and recommend to them that if anyone that's outside their bubble is visiting the property, that they actually should just get them to sign in with the QR code. It's amazing how many emails I've got back from tenants saying really they're really pleased to receive this help and this information. Just makes them feel so much safer. So make the QR codes available to them, and yeah, that's that relationship with the tenants. At the same time, you could probably share with them if you wanted to about the contractors and other things, that you're actually going to make sure that you're doing everything you can to make sure that they and their family are safe. So that basically sums up. I'm looking forward to answering the questions, but before I hand back to Ryan, just remind you to register this webinar as a CPD point if you're an RPMA member. And I'd also want to, wearing my chairman's hat, give you a bit of a taste. We've got 3 webinars signed up. We've got another one that I'm wanting to actually confirm on the 9th of December. But on Wednesday, the 27th, we've, in a conjunction with Hamish Turner Associates, they're giving our members a free access to a webinar called Growth Strategies in the Current COVID Climate. And that's going to be great. And then back to back, we've already got one on Thursday, the 28th, of avoiding stress and burnout. And the one thing that I'm finding is I'm talking to property managers around the country, and with COVID and everything else, this is a big issue. And so I really encourage you to get you and any other property manager you know to watch that webinar. And lastly, but not leastly, at the moment, we can actually advertise that we've got on Thursday, the 18th of November, a how to win new business when your competitors are undercutting you. So that's going to be another very good webinar to watch. So Ryan, back to you.
Thank you very much for that, David. So just to follow on from what you were saying, David, we're going to be running about 10 free webinars per year for our members. So a good amount of webinars every single year. Now, I don't think we've had any questions and answers. So one's just come in, which I'll get to in a moment. There was a question that I came up with during the webinar, David, and that was, you talked about virtual inspections, and myself, I sent out about 12 or 13 inspection notices the other day, and I asked for tenants to consent to it, and we got a few that came back to us and said no, they're not comfortable. So we're thinking about going back to those people and saying, hey, what about a virtual inspection? So my question to you is, what technology do you know is being used for virtual inspections?
Right. What we've used successfully is that we use the Zoom app. You can actually get a free Zoom app that will actually, you can go for multiple people for 40 minutes. So that's more than the time you need to do an inspection online. You need to actually have a cell phone linked in. You need 3 people so that you can actually dedicate the screen or get the tenant to dedicate the screen to them, so it's not flipping backwards and forwards as you're talking to them as they go around. That's very simplistic. We actually can give training on that, but it's a really useful tool. And again, my experience when I've used it in the past is that the tenants do love it. They do love going around. You get them to look under the sink for any leaks and, you know, that sort of thing. And it's a very, very good tool. And it's
so you direct the tenant to a certain degree, don't you?
Oh, there is a bit of art in it. And one thing is you can get what's that word, motion sickness, if they're just moving their phone all over the place. So one of the keys is to actually tell them it's just like a wedding ceremony. When they actually move the video around the room or something, they do it slow as if they're attending a wedding. It's one of the little keys that we find that works really well.
Good advice. We do have a couple of questions, or one compliment. Great presentation. Thank you for saying that, Alex. We've got a question here from John. How to register for those webinars that you were sort of forecasting for the rest of the year, David?
Sure. We've actually just launched our RPMA Facebook page, and we're just putting the final touches on the RPMA LinkedIn page. Both of those pages will have the webinars, depends on what the class school you go to. The other thing is that if you are an RPMA member, you will get an email and newsletters with those links and how to register for those webinars.
Perfect. Perfect. Any other questions from our attendees? Here's one from Melinda. We use Inspection Express. This allows the tenants to take their own photos and inspection reports following our company template. This allows the owner to get a full report as normal. That's very interesting.
Now that sounds great, and that is certainly an alternative. But my only concern would be, from my experience, is that are they only just showing you what they want you to see?
Yeah, good point, would be important to have some involvement by the property manager. Maybe you could say, hey, these are the certain things that I want you to take a look at during the inspection, perhaps. Oh, Melinda's just said, no, we asked them direct questions.
Oh, great. No, that's good. Sorry, I'm not familiar, Belinda, but it sounds great. Anything like that is excellent. Yeah.
David, I've got another question. You know how you mentioned towards the end of the presentation that you could actually send out a QR code to your tenants. Have you ever had issues where tenants go, thanks very much for the QR code, but I don't have a printer at home? So do you think a better way of doing it could be just taking the QR code with you to the property?
Oh, both. Right.
Yeah, okay.
Basically, if you've got a property manager going to do an inspection and a showing, you'd have them in a plastic folder with leaves. So you pick the property one for that and scan that when you go. But I send it to tenants, and there's the compliments have come where they say, yeah, we're going to put that on our door, and anyone who's not in our bubble, we're going to get them to scan it. Not everyone will do it, but it's a great public relations exercise.
Good one. Any other questions from attendees? Hi, David, loving the new association. Can you please, how to know we are members of RPMA? Have been in Promins and previously IMPA, thanks. Can you please let us know? Can you please know how to know we are members of RPMA?
All right. The Promins Council have moved over to start RPMA. We've accepted, or we are actually given free membership to all those people who are Promins. So that's the key from the 1st of October. Promins membership goes until the end of December. People will need to make a decision then whether they're going to renew with Promins or whether they're going to actually not renew with Promins and stay with us. It's entirely up to you. Our plan is to show that we can give true value for money and have a decent value proposition that you wouldn't want to leave. And it's up to us to make sure that we put our best foot forward and we convince you that RPMA is the way of the future.
Good one.
Just to answer that question a bit more, if you received an email from me or a newsletter, you know that you're on the list.
Good one. Just going back to the QR codes. Keith has said, we print the QR codes out in the office, we laminate them and take them to the property. For empty properties, we leave them on site. So that's another good way of doing it, and laminating them.
That doesn't surprise me with Keith. He's a great operator.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably it that we're going to get in terms of questions.
All right.
Well, we might wrap it up then. Thank you everyone for attending. This is history in the making because it's the very first webinar for RPMA. So once again, thank you so much. If you have any questions about any of the topics that were brought up in David's presentation, feel free to email him. He'd love to hear from you. And once again, thanks for tuning in to this webinar.